Welcome back to 303 in Junior English, and we're with you in your hymnals now in pages 1174, 1175 and following. We continue in our study of the Crucible, Arthur Miller's play Crucible in Act 2. Let's just review for a moment to make sure we're all on board. We have a situation where Hale has just shown up, Reverend Hale, has just shown up at John Proctor's house. He's kind of interrupted an argument between Elizabeth, Proctor's wife, and John Proctor. The source of that has to do with the fact that John Proctor has had this relationship with Abigail, and he does not want to, or he doesn't feel that comfortable confronting her and telling her that she is a whore, is the language that that his wife uses, and he will never be with her again. And then ironically, all of a sudden, Hale shows up. And when Hale shows up, he says, I'm not here officially, I'm here unofficially, because you have been, Elizabeth, somewhat mentioned in the court as maybe having issues. Well, the somewhat mentioned is, of course, the work of Abigail herself. And then there's this like little test, and John Proctor has to recite the commandments, and he's really good at reciting all of the 10 commandments except for one, and the one he can't remember to say out loud is the one that is that his wife helps him to remember, and it's adultery, sleeping with another person who's not your wife or husband, that's adultery. And Hale then makes some accusations towards John Proctor, ostensibly saying to Proctor, you haven't been coming to church. It's at this point Proctor is able to point out that, you know what, I don't like this Reverend Paris. He's ordained by God, Hale says, and Proctor says, you know, I really don't care. But I did help nail the roof on the church building and the door. So in other words, you can't hold me irreligious. I'm not a bad religious guy. I just don't like this guy. Then the question becomes the question of, do you believe in witches? Proctor kind of dances around the issue, but Elizabeth comes right out and says, no, if you're going to accuse me of being a witch, I don't believe in witches. And it's at that moment then, we're now on page 1174, Hale will say it, you surely do not fly against the gospel. The gospel, in other words, because it's part of church teaching, you cannot challenge it at all. Surely you don't do that. And it's in that moment that all of a sudden Giles Corey will show up. Okay, so that's where we are in 1174. Now let's go ahead and review the rest of Act 2 so you know what we're about to see. Corey will show up, others will show up, and we're going to find out that officially John Proctor's wife Elizabeth, Goody Proctor, has in fact been accused of witchcraft. The way it happens is bizarre. They show up and they say, do you have a little doll or a little puppet in your house? Well, of course, Elizabeth does have one because Mary Warren, just a little bit ago, was at the court all day and she made this little doll puppet and gave it to Mary Warren. There's a needle stuck in the stomach of the doll because she was sewing it. And Elizabeth says, yeah, why? Well, because Abigail Williams today in court, all of a sudden, her stomach started bleeding. Because there was a needle that got shoved into her stomach. And she said, you did it, and points at Elizabeth Proctor. She's like, what are you talking about? Well, you can kind of figure out what's happened here, right? Abigail was sitting next to Mary Warren, saw her making this puppet, probably asked her, who's it for? I'm going to give it to Elizabeth. Saw that she stuck the needle in the stomach as she was leaving. It's a pretty simple gig that all Abigail Williams has to do is when nobody's looking, stab herself in the stomach and then claim that this is being done by Elizabeth through sorcery, through witchcraft. I think there's probably a puppet in her house that looks like me with a needle sticking in his stomach. Go and check. Of course, once this happens, that's the proof they need. Now they're going to take John Proctor off. At the very end of this act, Proctor's got a serious dilemma on his hands. His wife will soon be condemned as a witch by Abigail Williams. And John Proctor knows it is entirely a scam, and John Proctor knows it has everything to do with him and the fact that he slept with Abigail Williams. Ultimately, it's going to lead to a conversation at the very end of this act between John Proctor and Mary Warren, their servant girl. And John tells Mary, we are going to the court to overturn the court. In other words, I'm going to tell the truth about what's been going down. The minute that, of course, happens, the play's going to shift to a whole different level in Act 3. All right, let's continue now with our study. I'm on page 1174, 1175. And again, we'll just be listening to the performance. Here we go.
Giles, Francis Mills, what's the matter?
They take my wife.
And mine, Rebecca. Rebecca's in the jail? Jail can't take her in this way. We've only now come from the jail and they've not even let us in to see them.
They've shut them back now, Mr. Hale.
My wife is the very brick and mortar of the church, Mr. Hale. The Giles' wife. There cannot be a woman closer yet to God than Martha
How
Connell.
is Rebecca charged, Mr. Nurse?
For murder, she's charged. For the marvellous and supernatural murder of Goody Putnam's baby. What am I to do, Mr. Hale?
Believe me, Mr. Nurse, if your Rebecca be tainted, then nothing's left to stop the whole green world from burning. Let you rest upon the justice of the court. The court will send her home, I know it.
You cannot mean she'll be tried in court, nurse.
Though our hearts break, we cannot flinch. These are no times, sir. There is a misty plot afoot, so subtle we shall be criminal to cling to old respects and ancient friendships. I have seen too many frightful things in court. The devil is alive in Satan, and we dare not quail to follow wherever the accusing finger points.
May such a woman murder children?
Remember, until an hour before the devil fell, God thought him beautiful in heaven.
Come in.
Good evening, Proctor.
Why, Mr. Cheever. Good evening.
Good evening, Nora. Well, good evening, Mr. Hale.
I hope you come not on business of the court.
I do, Proctor. I am clerk of the court now, you know. Now, believe me, Proctor, how heavy be the law, all its tonnage I do carry on my back tonight. I have a warrant for your wife.
Top of 1176.
Mr. Hale, you said she was not charged.
I know nothing of it. When was she charged, Mr. Cheever?
I am given 16 warrant tonight, sir, and she is one.
Who charged her?
Abigail Williams charged.
What's proof? What's
Mr.
proof?
Proctor, I have little time. The court bid me search your house, but I like not to search your house. So will you hand me any puppets that your wife may keep here?
Poppins?
I never kept no puppets, not since I were a girl.
I spy a puppet on your mantle, Goody Proctor.
Who's that? Why, Mrs. Mary's.
Would you please give it to me?
There. Has the court discovered a text in puppets, not?
Do you keep any others like this in the house?
No, not this one either till tonight. What signifies a puppet?
Why, a pocket. A pocket may signify... Now, woman, will you please to come with me?
She will not. Fetch Mary Elizabeth.
Yes, John.
What signifies a puppet, Mr. Cheever?
Well, they say it may signify that she... Why, this. This.
What's that?
Why, it is a needle. It is a needle stuck into the door.
What signifies a needle?
This go hard with her, Proctor. This, I had my doubts, Proctor. I had my doubts, but his calamity. You see, Mr. Hale, it is a needle.
Why? What meaning has it?
The girl, the Williams girl, Abigail Williams, sir, she sat down to dinner in Reverend Parris's house tonight, and without word nor warning, she falls to the floor like a struck beast, he says, and screamed a scream that a bull would weep to hear. And he goes to
Top
say
of
that
1177.
2 inches in the flesh of her belly, he draw a needle out.
No.
And demanding of her how she come to be so stabbed, she testify it for Goody Proctor's familiar spirit pushed it in.
Why, she done it herself. I hope you're not taking this for proof, Mr.
It
Hale.
is hard proof. I find here a poppet Goody Proctor keeps. I have found it, sir. And in the belly of the poppet a needle is stuck. I never wanted to see such proof of hell. And I bid you obstruct me not.
Here, Mary Warren, how did this puppet come into my house?
What puppet's that, sir?
This puppet here.
I think...
It is your puppet,
I
is it
think
not?
it's mine.
And how did it come into the house?
I made it in the cut, sir. I give it to Goody Proctor tonight.
Mary Warren, a needle had been found inside this puppet.
I meant no harm by it, sir.
You stuck that needle in yourself.
I believe I did, sir.
What say you now, Mr. Hale?
Child, you are certain this be your natural memory? May it be perhaps that someone conjured you even now to say this?
Conjures me? Why, no, sir. I'm entirely myself. I think. Let you ask Susanna Walcott. She saw me sewn and cut. Ask Abby. Abby sat beside me when I made it.
Mary! You charge a cold and cruel murder on Abigail.
I charge...
Abigail was stabbed tonight. A needle was found stuck into her belly.
She charges me.
Aye.
Top of 1178.
This murder. She must be ripped out of the world.
Sir, ripped out of the world. Give me the warrant. Proctor, you dare not touch that warrant.
Dare I?
Aye, good. Out with you. You have ripped the deputy governor's warrant, man.
Damn the deputy governor out of my house!
Proctor!
She's gone with them. What a broken minister.
Top of 1179.
Why do you never wonder if Penn is being innocent or Abigail?
Right.
Is the accuser always holy now? Were they born this morning as clean as God's fingers?
Vengeance! I'll tell you what's walking Salem. Vengeance is walking Salem. We are what we always were in Salem, but now the little crazy children are jangling the keys of the kingdom, and common vengeance writes the law. This warrant is vengeance. I'll not give my wife to vengeance.
Go, John.
Will not go.
I have 9 men outside. You cannot keep her. The law binds me, John. I cannot budge.
Will you see her take it, Mr. Hale?
Proctor, the court is just.
Pontius Pilate! God will not let you wash your hands of this.
John, I think I must go with them. Mary, there is bread enough for the morning. You will bake in the afternoon. Help Mr. Proctor as you were his daughter. You owe me that. And much more. John, when the children wake, speak nothing of witchcraft.
I will bring you home. I will bring you soon.
John, bring me soon.
I will fall like an ocean on that court. Fear nothing, Elizabeth.
I will fear nothing. And tell the children I have gone to visit someone sick.
She walks out the door. For a moment, Proctor watches from the doorway. Then there's the clank of the chain.
Damn you, man! You will not chain her! Open them! I'll not have it! I will not have a chain.
And yet silent, Minister. It is a fraud. You know it is a fraud. What keeps you, man, Mr. Proctor?
Out of my sight.
Charity, Proctor, charity.
1180.
What I have heard in a favor, I will not fear to testify in court. God help me, I cannot judge her guilty or innocent. I know not. Only this consider. The world goes mad, and it profit nothing. You should lay the cause to the vengeance of a little girl.
You are a coward. Though you be ordained in God's own tears, you are a coward now.
Proctor, I cannot think God be provoked so grandly by such a petty cause. The jails are packed. Our greatest judges sit in Salem now, and hangings promised. Man, we must look to cause proportionate. Was there murder done, perhaps, and now brought to light?
What's the source of all this, in other words?
Some secret blasphemy that stinks to heaven. Think on cause, man. And let you believe it there is your only way. When such confusion strikes upon the world, I shall pray God open up our eyes.
I never heard no murder done in Salem.
Leave me, Francis, leave me.
John, tell me,
Great question.
are we lost?
Go home now, Giles. We'll speak on it tomorrow.
Let you think on it. We'll come, Harry, huh?
Go now, Giles, go.
Good night, then. Come, friends.
And now Mary Warren and Proctor. Bottom of 1180.
Mr. Proctor, very likely the letter will come home once they're given proper evidence.
You're coming to the court with me, Mary. You will tell it to the
I
court.
cannot judge my
You will
father.
tell the court how the puppet come here and who stuck the needle
You
in.
kill me for saying that. I will charge lechery on you, Mr. Proctor.
There it
She
is.
told you.
I've known it, sir. She'll ruin you. I know she will.
Good. Then her saintliness is done with. We will slide together into our pit. You will tell the court what you know.
He'll turn on me.
You will. My wife will never die for us. I will bring your guts into your mouth, but that goodness will not die for me. Make your peace with it. Now hell and heaven grapple on our backs, and our old pretense is ripped away. Make your peace. Peace. It is a providence. And no great change. We are only what we always were. But naked now. I'm naked. And the wind, God's icy wind, will blow.
The second act then will finish with this really dramatic moment of Elizabeth Proctor being dragged away, chains put on her, And the obvious question is, by Hale, why would this be going on? Let's go ahead now and analyze these lines really quickly. First of all, you've got this poppet. Then you've got the needle in the stomach of the doll. And you've got Abigail Williams earlier that evening falling over with a needle stuck in her stomach. And this is hard proof on 1177. Then Mary Warren is called in. Note the irony at the bottom of 1177. Are you sure you gave this poppet to Elizabeth? Yeah. You're sure no one's conjuring you? Notice she says, I'm entirely myself, I think. Making even Mary Warren kind of doubt her own self as to exactly whether this is legit or not. The memory and all of that. When it finally becomes clear to Elizabeth what's going on, top of 1178, Elizabeth says it. The girl is murdered. She must be ripped out of the world. Now, of course, this is a mistake for Elizabeth to say this out loud because it starts to look as if it is Elizabeth versus Abigail. And there's a reason now, motivation, for Elizabeth to be using witchcraft to try to inflict pain on Abigail. Cheever will say, that's it, right? And I've got a warrant. I've got to arrest her. Fascinating, and this is important on 1178. Let's make sure we put it in our notes. John Proctor will tear up the warrant. This is completely against the law. He will tear up the warrant. Now, ripping up a piece of paper is going to be significant moments in this play. This will be the first time Proctor will do this. Ostensibly, let's write it in our notes. This is symbolic, isn't it? John Proctor is basically saying, I don't care about this court. It is of no importance and legitimacy to me anymore. Proctor will then go on. He will say to Hale on 1179 and then again on 1180. But let's look at the line at the very top of 1179. He says it to Hale. You are a broken minister. Hale's response is, Proctor, if she is innocent, the court, notice Proctor, if she is innocent, now again, these are really important lines to understanding the critique that Arthur Miller is making of Joseph McCarthy and what's going on during the McCarthy era and all these hearings. Look at it. If she is innocent, why do you never wonder if Paris be innocent or Abigail? Is the accuser always holy now? Were they born this morning as clean as God's fingers? I tell you what's walking Salem. Vengeance is walking Salem. We are what we always were in Salem, but now the little crazy children are jangling the keys of the kingdom, and common vengeance writes the law. This warrants vengeance. I'll not give my wife to vengeance. Now, what's interesting in this play, and this reminds us a lot at 3A, you can jot this down. This reminds us a lot of Shakespeare, and Shakespeare pulls this off as well. The audience knows something nobody else on stage knows. Or, of course, not everybody on stage knows. Certainly Hale doesn't know on stage. That the vengeance that Proctor is talking about is the vengeance from Abigail towards Elizabeth, because Elizabeth knows that Abigail and her husband have slept together. That's the vengeance that he's talking about. Of course, Hale has no idea. What do you mean vengeance? A little bit later, they're going to try to put it together, like what's going on. Notice, Herrick will say, the law binds me. Hale tries to give some, suggestion that everything's okay. The court is just. It's all going to be okay. Proctor calls him Pontius Pilate. Now, of course, if you know the story of Jesus Christ, at the conclusion of his life, Pilate will do this famous thing where he puts his hands in water and he washes his hands, symbolically saying, I'm not responsible for the death of an innocent man. In other words, notice that there's going to be several accusations by Proctor towards Hale. One, he's a broken minister. Two, that he is Pontius Pilate. A little bit later, he'll call him a coward, right? Proctor will say, I'll fall like an ocean on the court, fear nothing, Elizabeth. Giles will ask at the bottom of page 1179, it is a fraud. You know it's a fraud. This is all a contrivance, which will then lead Proctor to say to Hale on page 1180, out of my sight. I don't want to see you anymore. Hale says, charity, Proctor, charity. In other words, be nice, be nice. What I have heard in her favor, I will not fear to testify in court. Then Hale says it out loud. It's almost like a little mini soliloquy. God help me. I cannot judge her guilty or innocent, I know not. Only this consider, the world goes mad, and it profit nothing you should lay the cause to the vengeance of a little girl. In other words, this doesn't make any sense. Surely Abigail wouldn't do all this crazy. Why? What's the motivation? Notice he keeps going. He says, Proctor calls him. He says, you are a coward. Though you be ordained in God's own tears, you are a coward now. So notice this is the second ordained minister that John Proctor has said is illegitimate. Hale comes back. Proctor, I cannot think God be provoked so grandly by such a petty cause. The jails are packed. Our greatest judges sit in Salem now, and hanging's promised. Man, we must look to cause proportionate. In other words, there's got to be some serious reason why all of this is going down if it ain't witchcraft. Well, the irony, of course, is what? Write it down in your notes. What's the irony? We know what the cause is. And it's something as simple as John Proctor slept with Abigail Williams and she wants to get him back. And the easy way to do that is to kill Elizabeth. And the easy way to do that is just to convict her of being a witch. Right? Were some murder done, perhaps, Hale continues, and never brought to light? Question mark. Abomination? Some secret blasphemy that stinks to heaven. Think on cause, man, and let you help me to discover it. For there's your way, believe it. There is your only way when such confusion strikes upon the world. Let's put it in our notes. What's ironic is that Hale says to Proctor what earlier Elizabeth had said to Proctor. The only way this is going to get solved is for you, John Proctor, to go forward and to confess in front of everybody you slept with Abigail, and that's why she is doing